The Intergalactic Council's golden spires shimmered beneath twin suns as dignitaries passed judgment on another diplomatic incident. A child had died, human, female, age 9. Her name was barely mentioned in the official report. Just the minor. She had been caught in the chaos during a protest on Galvorith, the Council's capital world. Protesters clashed with security drones. Energy pulses flew. One stray shot pierced the body of a little girl who wasn't even supposed to be there. Wrong place. Wrong time. That was the official version. Earth's envoy stood silently as the verdict was read. The Council's judgment was delivered without emotion. The use of force had been justified under Security Protocol 9. No charges. No consequences. Case closed. The Chancellor didn't look up. For most species, the matter was finished. For humanity, it had only begun. The envoy asked for reconsideration, citing the Interstellar Charter, mutual protection clauses, and basic accountability. No one responded. A few glanced up, most did not. One delegate whispered to another, wondering aloud why humans mourned so deeply for one child. Others chuckled quietly. No species could match humanity's emotional excess, they said. Their grief was considered weakness. Humanity had never been more than a marginal player in the Council. They were tolerated, occasionally mocked, seldom respected. Their culture was seen as dramatic, their values outdated. Their loyalty to family was regarded as a trait of underdeveloped civilizations. Empires didn't stop over one lost life. But humans weren't an empire. They were something else. The child, named Leah, had been the daughter of Ambassador Kyren Elon. He didn't speak after the verdict. He didn't move. He just stared forward as if memorizing the faces of those who had dismissed her life. His wife collapsed in the chamber shortly after. No one offered help. The guards escorted her out like a disturbance. The session continued. Later, Earth issued a short statement. It expressed disappointment in the Council's decision and announced a temporary diplomatic withdrawal. That was it. No sanctions. No threats. Just silence. The galaxy took this as acceptance. Some mocked humanity's inability to retaliate. Others ignored the matter entirely. A commentator from the ZY-Ren coalition said humans were soft. They mourn loudly but never act. Their silence was interpreted as surrender. On Earth, things were different. The girl's image spread across every colony. News outlets replayed the Council footage alongside her school videos and birthday recordings. Vigils formed. Streets filled with candles and songs. Her death was not a footnote. It was a fracture. Across the human systems, something began to shift, subtle, quiet, but irreversible. 3 days after the verdict, Earth transmitted a single sentence across open frequencies. It was brief, unornamented, without visible emotion. The tone was neutral, but the weight behind it carried centuries. When the transmission ended, the channel went dark. Earth ceased all diplomatic communications. Embassies closed. Trade deals were suspended. Civilian transports were recalled. Human military patrols began rerouting. No explanation was given. It wasn't war. It wasn't retaliation. It was preparation. But for what, no one could say. Analysts debated what it meant. Was it political theater? Grief? Or something more calculated? Humans said nothing. The silence extended across their colonies, like a storm gathering behind closed doors. Their neighbors speculated, argued, and dismissed. But those who had studied humanity's past grew quiet. Human history was not a record of peace. They were survivors of extinction events, builders of war machines, authors of brutal revolutions. They had known loss. But more importantly, they had known what to do with it. When humanity stopped speaking, it wasn't because they had nothing left to say. It was because they were deciding what came next. The name Liad disappeared from most council records within a week. But on Earth it remained. On walls. In code. In song. In silence. And humanity does not forget. Earth's diplomatic channels went dark. Embassies were closed without farewell, trade delegations vanished overnight, and no human representatives appeared at subsequent council sessions. Messages sent towards Sol received no acknowledgement. The silence was total. What the galaxy dismissed as grief was, in fact, a withdrawal deeper than mourning, a recalibration. Behind the curtain of silence, Earth was listening, watching, remembering. Within human-controlled space, quiet preparations began. Not with visible fleets or grand announcements, but in buried systems long untouched. Access logs lit up in sealed bunkers hidden beneath ice shelves, deserts, and ocean floors. Signal paths rerouted through encrypted black box networks. An ancient protocol began to surface, classified beyond any military clearance still in use. Few even remembered its existence. The protocol had one trigger: irreversible dishonor through external aggression with no pathway to justice. The death of a civilian child, denied recognition, matched that definition exactly. The name of the protocol was not spoken. It didn't need to be. The very fact it had activated meant a threshold had been crossed. In archives older than the current Terran Federation, records of a different era flickered back to life. A time when humanity had not been a minor player, but a threat. Not united by diplomacy, but by survival. During the Collapse era, when the first interstellar expansion ended in civil war and extinction-level events, humanity had created tools not for defense, but for vengeance. Cold. Automated. Relentless. Then, with peace, they had buried those tools and rewritten their story. The Council had never seen that version of humanity. They had encountered explorers, diplomats, scientists. They had not met the engineers who designed entire systems to go dormant for centuries until called upon by code and blood. Earth had never needed those weapons again. Until now. Rumors began spreading through nearby systems. Merchant vessels spoke of strange lights near restricted zones. Mining operations in asteroid belts were quietly halted by automated warnings in an ancient human dialect. Outposts once thought abandoned now pulsed with quiet energy. Human colonies were calm on the surface, but beneath the exterior, movement accelerated. Recruits with no known identity appeared on secure manifests. Civilian transports were diverted towards Sol without explanation. Something was being gathered. On Proxima's moon station, a deep archive technician flagged a data anomaly, a hidden broadcast pattern active for the first time in centuries. It was triangulated to Earth's lunar core. The signal, though unreadable, matched a historic frequency once used during the pre-Federation consolidation wars. The technician escalated it, but the chain of command above him had already been cleared. There would be no report. No trace. Alien intelligence networks attempted to interpret Earth's behavior. The Council authorized discreet surveillance of the Sol system. Probes sent past the heliopause disappeared. Stealth drones were intercepted by defense arrays they didn't know existed. An intelligence officer from the Cerellian Directorate noted, with growing discomfort, that Earth's entire defense grid had been dormant for centuries, and now showed signs of reactivation. Quiet. Selective. Purposeful. What no one understood was that humanity had never truly disarmed. They had simply sealed the knife in a vault, locked it behind a riddle, and trusted they would never have to open it again. The riddle had been solved. The vault was open. Within Earth's own command hierarchy, those who knew the truth convened without title or insignia. They did not debate or seek approval. The child's death had passed the threshold. The protocol had triggered automatically, bypassing political structures entirely. Ancient systems of deterrence had been reclassified. Operational control passed not to generals, but to constructs awakened from centuries of cold sleep. Across 10 different sectors, long-forgotten stations began transmitting in synchronized rhythm. A code, single-lined, repeating, confirmation received. Awaiting deployment parameters. Earth had not declared war. They had not even raised their voice. But every action pointed to one conclusion. Retaliation was no longer a question of if, but when. And the galaxy, still deaf to the meaning of the silence, remained unprepared. The Council misread the quiet. In the absence of threats or demands, they concluded humanity had accepted the outcome. Surveillance shifted elsewhere. Trade resumed among unaffected systems. Official statements described the situation as regrettable but resolved. Yet behind closed doors, a few species began to notice patterns that didn't align with grief. Council border monitors picked up irregular gravimetric pulses near Sol. Faint, spaced evenly, and unlike any standard propulsion signature. When questioned, Terran representatives gave no response. Navigation logs from passing vessels revealed that human space was now bracketed with invisible interdiction zones, each capable of locking down warp travel within seconds. These zones hadn't existed before, and no formal announcement accompanied their activation. A Sorelian survey team attempting to chart unclaimed star lanes adjacent to human colonies vanished. Weeks later, their ship reappeared at a neutral port, its systems scrubbed and crew memory dampened. No one could explain how or why. The only clue was a single line etched into the captain's desk: entry denied. Internal Council records showed something deeper. Human encryption traffic, previously minimal, had surged. Most of it was routed through quantum-laced carriers, dark channels only used by Earth's pre-Federation command units. These lines had been dormant for generations. Now they pulsed with silent coordination. No one on the outside could decrypt them. No one dared to ask. Unmanned exploration crafts scanning old Terran battlefields in deep space began disappearing. Warnings appeared in their place, ancient, pre-modern human languages formatted for one audience: survivors of the last galactic dark age. Those messages hadn't been transmitted since the collapse wars. Their reactivation wasn't accidental. On Earth, shipyards that had long produced only colonial freighters and civilian transports began receiving raw material shipments measured in megatons. The logistical scale didn't match public records. Mining yields across Luna, Mars, and the Jovian moons surged, though no corresponding market output was reported. The resource buildup was too large for economic growth. It was strategic. Despite the scale of the movements, no new fleets appeared on registry logs. Human defense forces remained officially unchanged. But orbital telescopes on neutral stations occasionally captured glimpses of mass shadows moving in planetary blind spots. Ships larger than dreadnoughts, darker than void, leaving no engine trace behind. Spectrographic analysis suggested active cloaking, something humanity had never publicly developed. And yet they had it. In the Council's military bureau, the handful of analysts assigned to human affairs submitted escalating alerts. Their warnings were dismissed. Humanity lacked the fleet numbers to threaten Council supremacy, they said. They were grieving. Grief didn't build warships. Those analysts were removed from duty within the month. Elsewhere, smaller civilizations began withdrawing their delegations from Earth's vicinity. Not from hostility, but from instinct. Reports of silent satellites repositioning in interstellar space were quietly filed and ignored. A diplomatic vessel from the Thyrix Enclave reported a transmission in an old Terran dialect, warning all non-human traffic to avoid the Sol exclusion radius. The dialect hadn't been used in 200 years. The message was followed by nothing. No demands. No overt warnings. Just absence. Alien cartographers noticed that human systems were no longer reporting astrometric data to central archives. In effect, Earth had vanished from the shared maps. Not hidden, erased. This wasn't a retreat. It was concealment. Total strategic invisibility. A race preparing not for negotiation, but for precision. The Intergalactic Council had mistaken silence for surrender. What they had failed to recognize was that humanity was not escalating a conflict. They were executing a process already set in motion by a system older than their membership. The directive required no politics. Only time. And time was nearly up. Without declaration, without preamble, they arrived. Sensors along the outer council territories lit up with gravitational anomalies, not localized but sector-wide. Dozens of ships, unregistered and untracked, emerged simultaneously across strategic points. They bore no insignia, no identifiers, no standard IFF. They didn't broadcast demands or hail stations. They didn't jam communications. They didn't need to. The message was embedded in their presence. The vessels weren't like modern warships. They weren't sleek or elegant. They were old, predating most known military designs, yet functionally perfect. Each hull bore the distinct absence of design compromise, built for purpose, engineered for efficiency, armored against time itself. Their surfaces bent light without emitting heat. Their movements ignored inertia. They operated with synchronization that defied known coordination protocols. The lead vessel parked in geosynchronous orbit over the Council's homeworld. Its mass distorted tides. It made no demands. It simply existed, an undeniable center of attention. Attempts to scan its internals failed. Even basic radar returned corrupted data. No shields, no weapons visible, just absence. Then, across every open frequency, a voice played in monotone standard. Response initiated. Judgment issued. Enforcement underway. At that instant, across multiple Council sectors, coordinated strikes unfolded. No planets were bombed. No cities destroyed. Only military infrastructure was dismantled with surgical efficiency. Communications hubs melted without kinetic force. Defense satellites imploded under invisible pressure. Central fleet arrays went dark without a single projectile fired. The precision was absolute. Commanders screamed for reinforcements. Fleets mobilized, only to find their FTL routes pre-blocked by spatial interference generated from unseen platforms. Jump points collapsed mid-transition. Whole battalions arrived in system and found nothing to engage. Their targeting systems refused to lock. Guidance AIs reported non-existent feedback loops. Gunnery failed. Combat systems registered no threats even while stations vanished in orbit. The enemy wasn't just invisible, it was unreadable. Council admirals realized the horrifying truth. The attackers had mapped their defensive grid years in advance. They hadn't deployed weapons to overpower. They had deployed assets to disable. Systems were collapsing not from force, but from design-level exploitation. Entire fleets were rendered inert before they could issue fire orders. Then came the broadcast, played only once across the Council's encrypted channels. You render justice optional. We've corrected the error. In less than an hour, 3 high command installations were neutralized. Not destroyed, captured. Every senior officer in charge of the Council's verdict was extracted. No witnesses, no residue, no resistance. Security footage ceased mid-frame. Evacuation alarms never sounded. All that remained were sealed structures with digital timestamps showing the precise moment of loss. The Council, paralyzed, attempted a formal diplomatic outreach. The message was sent. No reply came. Seconds later, the system it originated from lost power, cut cleanly from grid to backup. Earth had not acknowledged their plea. Earth had not spoken since. Across civilian networks, broadcasts emerged from anonymous accounts showing fleet silhouettes against dying suns, engines cold, yet moving. Non-human commentators argued if these ships were even manned. The consensus shifted, they weren't. They didn't need to be. Back on Earth, no parades formed, no announcements made. Humanity's own citizens were unaware of the full scale. The enforcement directive had not required public mobilization. Only silence, followed by action. Galactic media scrambled to name the fleet. Some called it the Black Armada. Others, the Ghost Fleet. Those who understood history knew better. These weren't relics. They were promises, forged before peace, designed to wait. Their mission wasn't domination, it was calibration. A violent correction, centuries deferred, now made absolute. By the end of the cycle, Earth withdrew its presence from each contested location. Not one ship was lost. Not one civilian was harmed. Not one mistake was made. The punishment was complete. The fleet vanished as abruptly as it had appeared. No ships remained in orbit, no wreckage, no trace of their presence, only the absence of what once stood there. Military command centers were empty. Entire intelligence bureaus dissolved without resistance. The Council released no statements, offered no explanations. Silence spread, not from Earth this time, but from those who had once ruled through assumption. Systems bordering human territory updated their navigational maps. Where once there had been blank zones or inactive routes, new advisories appeared: entry restricted, human jurisdiction. No enforcement visible, no checkpoints deployed. Just the knowledge that violating those lines would not trigger negotiation, only removal. In diplomatic circles, whispers turned to doctrine. Humanity's status was quietly revised. No longer categorized as a minor species, no longer seen as emotionally volatile. They were now listed under a new designation: autonomous enforcement capable. A term never used before. No one admitted who wrote it. The delegates responsible for denying justice were gone. Not confirmed dead, not declared missing, gone, as if erased from existence. Their homeworlds, stripped of defenses, remained untouched otherwise. No civilians harmed. No structures damaged. The precision unnerved everyone. Earth had demonstrated it could bypass any defense, remove any target, and vanish before a response could form. Not even the Council's elite had expected that scale of control. The galaxy changed in their wake. Trade routes rerouted to avoid proximity to human systems, not from fear of war, but to avoid being noticed. Civilizations that once mocked human sentiment began re-examining their own doctrines. Some reopened their diplomatic channels. Others initiated independent reviews of unresolved human-related incidents, quietly issuing posthumous pardons or reparation offers with no expectation of reply. A memorial appeared on the former council capital. Unattributed. A single slab of alloy bearing no national symbol, no creator's name, just one line etched in ancient Terran standard. For the one who was not heard. The message spread faster than official reports. Across the networks, humanity's silence now carried weight heavier than any threat. Where they had once been overlooked, they were now studied. Where their values had been dismissed, they were now feared, not because of their weapons, but because of what they chose not to destroy. On Earth, the moment passed without celebration. The fleets returned to dormancy. Systems shut down, re-entered encrypted sleep. The protocol locked itself again, untriggered until the next violation met its ancient criteria. No broadcast followed. No explanation was ever given to the galaxy. Humanity had done what it came to do, and nothing more. In the years that followed, interstellar policies shifted. The Council restructured, now fragmented into coalitions wary of one another. Mutual defense pacts were quietly renegotiated to include human oversight, not because Earth demanded it, but because no one dared exclude them. Diplomatic missions to Sol resumed, this time without condescension. Leah's name became a symbol. Songs written, stories told, not just by humans, but by those who had once doubted their conviction. She came to represent something the galaxy had long forgotten: consequence. No human official ever spoke about the operation. No public acknowledgement was ever made. Yet every race knew its cost. Not just in lives removed, but in certainty shattered. The illusion of safety built on Earth's silence was gone. And so the galaxy moved forward, changed not by conquest, but by one irrevocable act. A child had been taken. Earth had responded, not with war, but with precision. Not in anger, but in finality. They had not acted for dominance, nor expansion. They had acted because the universe needed to remember. Not who humans were, but what they still carried. And now, they would never be forgotten again.